I woke up at 2:47 a.m. on February 10th, 2026, with my heart absolutely pounding in my chest. I'm talking like it was trying to break through my ribs. And the thing is, I wasn't having a nightmare. I wasn't anxious about anything. But Jesus had just shown me something about the next 72 hours, something about what's coming for the church. And I'm sitting here 2 days later, still shaking as I try to tell you this, what he revealed about who's actually ready and who isn't. It's not what any of us have been taught, not even close. Before we begin, tell me one thing you're praying for right now in the comments. I want to pray with you by name. And if you're a true believer in Christ, if you've genuinely repented, if you have saving faith, if you're truly following Jesus, please subscribe. What you're about to hear will challenge everything you've been taught about readiness. I need to know there are believers out there who are awake, watching, and ready. So, let me back up a little bit. On the evening of February 9th, I drove out to this place I go sometimes when I need to get away from everything. It's this abandoned cathedral about 40 minutes outside of town. Been there since the 1800s, partially collapsed roof, nature slowly reclaiming it. Vines crawl up the stone walls, and there are these massive oak trees that have grown right up through where the floor used to be. When the late afternoon sun comes through the broken stained glass windows, it creates these beams of colored light, reds and blues and golds cutting through the dust and the shadows. It's honestly one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. I go there to pray, to think, to just be still. You know, playing Jesus on The Chosen is an incredible honor, but it's also heavy. People project things onto you, they expect things, and sometimes I just need to remember that I'm not him. I'm just a 51-year-old guy trying to follow him as best I can. That evening, I sat on one of the old wooden pews that's somehow still intact, running my hand over the worn armrest. The wood was smooth, polished by 100 years of hands before mine. I could hear birds nesting in the rafters, and there was this smell, hard to describe, like old stone and earth, and something almost sweet, like decay and growth happening at the same time. I wasn't planning to pray about anything specific. I just wanted to sit there in the quiet. But as I watched the dust mows dancing in those colored beams of light, I found myself asking out loud, Lord, is your church ready? Are we actually ready for what's coming? It was an honest question. With everything happening in the world right now, the chaos, the division, the way even Christians seem to be at each other's throats, I needed to know. The temperature dropped. I'm not exaggerating. It was probably 50 degrees outside, cool but not cold. And suddenly I could see my breath. The light coming through the stained glass seemed to intensify, and I felt this presence, this weight that made me slide off the pew onto my knees on the dirt floor. You really want to know? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. I've heard people describe encounters with Jesus, and honestly, I always wondered if they were exaggerating or being dramatic. I'm not. His voice was like thunder that doesn't hurt your ears, like it bypassed my hearing altogether and spoke directly into my chest. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my hands gripping the edge of the pew. Then I'll show you, he said. But what you're about to see in the next 72 hours will leave you speechless. Don't ignore this warning. The cathedral around me began to shift. The walls were still there, but they became translucent, like I could see through them into somewhere else, multiple somewhere elses. It was like looking at 100 TV screens at once, except they were all around me, three-dimensional, and I could somehow focus on any one of them while still being aware of all the others. Look, Jesus said, and I realized he was standing next to me, though I hadn't seen him appear. He was pointing to one of these vision windows. And when I looked, I saw a church, a big one, modern building. Probably seats 2,000 people. The parking lot was full, packed, and people were streaming in, dressed nice, carrying their Bibles, smiling and greeting each other. This is Sunday morning, Jesus said. 2 days from now. Watch. I watched the service. The worship was good, professional. The band was tight. The lighting was perfect. People had their hands raised. The pastor preached a solid sermon about faith and perseverance. People took notes. They said, Amen. At the end, dozens came forward for prayer. What do you see? Jesus asked me. I see a healthy church, I said. But it came out like a question, because something in his tone told me I was missing something. Look closer. Look with my eyes. And then everything changed. It was like a filter was removed, and I could see what was actually happening in people's hearts. I could see what they were really thinking during worship, what they were really feeling during the sermon. And I'm telling you, I wanted to look away. The woman in the third row with her hands raised. She was mentally planning her afternoon shopping trip, thinking about whether she had time to hit both Target and Whole Foods. The man taking notes. He was noting down points he could use to win an argument with his brother. The couple holding hands. They'd screamed at each other in the car on the way there and were performing unity. They didn't feel, but that wasn't even the worst part. Now watch what happens when they leave. Jesus said, I watched them file out, get in their cars, drive home, and within hours, I mean literally within hours, it was like church hadn't even happened. The same arguments, the same entertainment choices, the same priorities, the same lives they'd been living all week. Church was just a thing they did, a box they checked. Lord, but they were there, I said, and I could hear the desperation in my own voice. They showed up, they worshiped, they performed, he interrupted, and there was such sadness in his voice. They performed worship, they performed attention, they performed devotion, but their hearts, he shook his head, their hearts are far from me. The cathedral around us seemed to darken, the colored light fading to shadows. I felt sick to my stomach. How many? I whispered. How many in that church are actually ready? He didn't answer with words. Instead, the vision shifted, and I saw the same church, but now there was a glow around certain people, not many. Out of the 2,000 people in that building, maybe 30 had this light around them. Maybe. These are the ones who are mine, Jesus said. These are the ones who have died to themselves, who have counted the cost and paid it, who don't just know about me, they know me, they've let me transform them from the inside out. I was crying now, tears making tracks down my face. But the others, they believe in you, they pray, they read their Bibles. Do they? He asked. Or do they believe in a version of me they've created? A Jesus who requires nothing, who changes nothing, who's just there to bless their plans and make them feel good on Sunday mornings? The vision expanded, and suddenly I was seeing churches all over the country, all over the world, the same pattern everywhere. Buildings full of people, but so few, so heartbreakingly few, who were actually his. This is what I wanted to show you first, Jesus said. And we were back in the cathedral, the visions fading. The colored light from the stained glass was returning, but it seemed dimmer now, sadder. Because in 72 hours, something is going to happen. Not the end, not yet, but a shaking, a test, and most of my church isn't ready. They think they are. They've been told they are, but they're not. I was on my hands and knees now, literally unable to stand. What kind of test? What's going to happen tomorrow night? He said, I'll show you what the test looks like, and the night after that, I'll show you how to pass it. But tonight, I needed you to see the truth about readiness, because the church has been teaching that readiness is about knowledge, about correct doctrine, about showing up and saying the right words. But readiness, he knelt down beside me and I felt his hand on my shoulder. Readiness is about transformation. It's about whether you've actually let me change you or whether you've just added me to your life like an accessory. The weight of his presence began to lift, and I knew he was about to leave. The cathedral was just a cathedral again, broken and beautiful and empty except for me. Wait, I called out. How do I tell people this? How do I make them understand? His voice came one more time, echoing off the stone walls. Tell them what you saw. Tell them the truth. And tell them they have 72 hours to examine their hearts before the test comes. Some will listen, most won't, but the ones who do. There was a pause, and then the ones who do will be ready. I don't know how long I stayed there on the floor of that cathedral, long enough for the sun to set completely, for the colored light to fade to darkness, for the temperature to return to normal. When I finally stood up, my legs were shaking, and I had to lean against the pew for support. I drove home in a day-saze, barely remembering the route. I kept seeing those churches, all those people, all that performance masquerading as devotion. I kept seeing the 30 people out of 2,000 who had that light around them. When I got home, I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, Jesus' words echoing in my mind. In 72 hours, something is going to happen. That's when I looked at my phone and saw it was 2:47 a.m. February 10th, which meant the 72 hours had already started counting down. And I just knew that the next night he was going to show me something even harder to hear. I spent all of February 10th in this weird fog, like I was going through the motions of my day, but I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. I kept looking at people at the grocery store, at the gas station, even just walking down the street and wondering, are they ready? Do they have that light around them, or are they just performing? I tried to work on some script preparation for the show, but I couldn't focus. The words on the page just blurred together. Around 3:00 p.m., I gave up and decided to go back to the cathedral. I don't know why exactly. Maybe I was hoping Jesus would appear again in the daylight, give me some clarity, tell me I'd misunderstood what I'd seen the night before. The drive out there felt longer this time. The sky was overcast, heavy gray clouds pressing down, and there was this wind that kept buffeting my car. When I pulled up to the cathedral, the whole place looked different in the dim afternoon light, more ominous, more like the ruin it actually was, rather than the beautiful sanctuary it had seemed the night before. I walked through the broken doorway, and immediately I felt it, that same presence, that same weight in the air, but it was heavier now, more oppressive. The temperature was already cold, and I could see my breath, even though it was probably 55 degrees outside. "You came back," Jesus said, and I spun around to see him standing near what used to be the altar. The stained glass behind him was barely letting any light through because of the clouds, so he was mostly in shadow. "I knew you would. You need to see the rest." "Lord, I've been thinking about last night all day," I said, and my voice sounded small in that big empty space. "Those people in that church, they're not bad people. They're trying. They're trying to earn something that can't be earned," he interrupted, but his voice was gentle, sad. "Or they think they already have something they don't actually possess. Come sit. What I'm about to show you tonight is harder than what you saw yesterday." I sat on the same pew as before, and he sat beside me. It felt surreal, Jesus. The actual Jesus sitting on a broken pew in an abandoned cathedral about to show me something that would, as he'd said, leave me speechless. "Last night I showed you the church as it is," he said. "Tonight I'm going to show you what the test looks like, the test that's coming in." He paused, and I knew he was counting down the hours. In about 35 hours from now, February 12th, 2026, tomorrow. My heart started pounding. What kind of test? Instead of answering, he gestured toward the center of the cathedral, and suddenly the air there began to shimmer and shift. It was like reality was tearing open, and I could see through into, I don't even know how to describe it. It wasn't quite earth, but it wasn't quite heaven either. It was like an in-between place. This is what I'm going to allow. Jesus said a moment where the veil becomes thin, where people will have to choose, really choose who they serve, not with their words, not with their Sunday morning performance, but with their actual hearts, their actual lives, their actual priorities. The vision solidified, and I found myself looking at that same church from the night before. Same building, same people. But this time, something was different. There was this, I don't know, like a pressure in the air, like reality itself was holding its breath. "Watch," Jesus said. I watched as people went about their normal Wednesday evening, because that's what February 12th was going to be, a Wednesday. Some were at church for midweek service. Others were at home. Some were at work, at restaurants, at the gym, normal life. And then it happened. It wasn't dramatic. There was no trumpet sound, no earthquake, no visible sign. But suddenly everyone, and I mean everyone, felt it. This question that appeared in their hearts, not in words exactly, but in a knowing. Will you choose me now, right now, in this moment, with everything you have? This is the test, Jesus said quietly beside me. Not a test of knowledge, not a test of doctrine, not a test of how many Bible verses they've memorized or how many services they've attended. A test of the heart, a test of who they actually love more. Me or their life as they've built it. What I saw next absolutely devastated me. I watched a pastor, a good man, a man who'd preached hundreds of sermons about faith and surrender, feel that question in his heart. And I saw him hesitate. I saw him think about his reputation, his church building, his salary, his status in the community. I saw him mentally calculate what full surrender would cost him. And I watched him choose himself, not openly, not dramatically, but in his heart, in that moment, he chose to keep his life instead of losing it. But he's a pastor, I whispered, horrified. He's devoted his whole life to ministry. He's devoted his life to a career in ministry, Jesus corrected. There's a difference. He loves the idea of me. He loves teaching about me, but he doesn't actually love me more than he loves his comfortable life. The vision shifted, and I saw a woman I recognized from the church, one of the worship leaders. Beautiful voice, always up front, leading people in praise. The question hit her heart, too, and I saw her face change. She felt it. She knew what was being asked, and for a moment, just a moment, I thought she was going to say yes. But then I saw her think about her music career, her Instagram following, her brand partnerships, the album she was working on. I saw her convince herself that she could serve Jesus and keep all of that. That full surrender wasn't really necessary, that God wanted her to be successful. She's choosing her platform over my presence, Jesus said, and I could hear the grief in his voice. She thinks she's using her gifts for me, but really she's using me to build her gifts, one after another. I watched people face this test, and one after another I watched them fail. Not all of them. There were some, those same 30 or so from the night before, who said yes immediately, without hesitation, without calculation. But they were so few. A businessman who'd been a deacon for 20 years chose his company over Christ. A missionary, an actual missionary, chose the security of her organization's approval over the risk of full obedience. A seminary professor chose his theological reputation over truth that would cost him his position. A youth pastor chose the approval of parents and teens over the radical message Jesus was calling him to preach. "Stop," I said, and I realized I was crying again. "Please stop, I can't watch anymore." But Jesus didn't stop the vision. "You need to see this," he said firmly, "because this is what's coming. And people need to be warned. They need to know that readiness isn't about what they profess. It's about what they actually choose when the moment comes." The cathedral around us seemed to be getting darker, the shadows deeper. The wind outside was picking up, and I could hear it howling through the broken roof, through the empty windows. "Why?" I asked. "Why are they failing? They believe in you. They've given their lives to serving you." "Have they?" he asked, and his voice was sharp now, cutting. "Or have they given their lives to serving a version of Christianity that costs them nothing, that requires no real sacrifice, that lets them keep their comfort, their security, their reputation, their plans?" He stood up and walked toward the altar, his footsteps echoing on the stone floor. "I told them to take up their cross daily. Daily. Do you know what a cross is? It's an instrument of death." I wasn't speaking metaphorically. I was telling them that following me means dying. Dying to their own plans, their own desires, their own version of what their life should look like. The vision shifted again, and now I was seeing inside people's prayer lives. I saw them praying for blessings, for provision, for help with their problems, for their plans to succeed. But I didn't see them praying for transformation. I didn't see them praying for Jesus to tear down everything in them that wasn't of him. I didn't see them praying for the privilege of suffering for his name. "They want me to serve their agenda," Jesus said, turning back to face me. "They want me to be their helper, their life coach, their cosmic vending machine. But they don't want me to be their Lord, because Lord means I get to decide. Lord means they surrender control. Lord means they might have to give up things they love." I thought about my own life, my own prayers, my own carefully constructed plans and dreams, and I felt sick. "Am I going to fail this test?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He walked back over and sat beside me again. "That depends," he said. "Are you willing to lose everything? Your career, your reputation, your comfort, your plans, all of it. Are you willing to be thought a fool? To be rejected by people you respect? To have nothing left but me?" I wanted to say yes immediately. I wanted to be like those 30 people who didn't hesitate. But I was honest enough to recognize the fear in my own heart, the calculations I was already starting to make. I want to be willing," I said finally, "but I'm scared." "Good," he said. And there was something almost like approval in his voice. "At least you're being honest. Most people aren't even honest enough. to admit their fear. They just dress up their self-preservation and spiritual language and convince themselves they're being wise. The vision was still playing out around us, and I forced myself to keep watching. I saw a single mom, one of those 30, with the light around her, face the same test. She was working 2 jobs, barely making ends meet, exhausted all the time. And when that question hit her heart, I saw her face light up. She didn't hesitate. She didn't calculate. She just said yes immediately, completely. Why? I asked. Why did she pass when the pastor failed? She has so much more to lose. Because she already lost it, Jesus said simply. She already died to her own life. She already surrendered her plans, her comfort, her security. She's been living by faith, real faith, not the pretend faith that's just positive thinking with Bible verses attached for years. So when the test came, it wasn't actually a test for her. It was just another day of saying yes to me. I watched an elderly man in a nursing home, forgotten by his family, barely able to move. The test came to him too, and he passed instantly. I watched a teenager struggling with addiction pass the test. I watched a homeless man pass it. I watched a woman dying of cancer pass it. The ones who pass, I said slowly, understanding, dawning, they're the ones who already have nothing left to lose, or the ones who've already chosen to lose everything. Yes, Jesus said. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. I wasn't giving them a pep talk. I was telling them the truth that the kingdom belongs to those who've given up on building their own kingdoms. The wind outside was really howling now, and the temperature in the cathedral had dropped even further. I was shivering, but I didn't think it was just from the cold. What happens to the ones who fail? I asked, almost afraid to hear the answer. Jesus was quiet for a long moment. They continue on, he said finally. They keep going to church, keep reading their Bibles, keep praying their self-centered prayers, but they miss it. They miss the moment. They miss the opportunity to be part of what I'm actually doing. And when the real end comes, not this test, but the final one, they'll realize too late that they never actually knew me. They knew about me. They built their whole lives around the idea of me, but they never actually surrendered to me. I thought about those words from Matthew 7, the ones that have always terrified me. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. That's what you're talking about. I said, those people, they're in church, they're doing ministry, they're performing miracles, but they never actually surrendered their hearts. Yes, he said quietly. And tomorrow, February 12th, 2026, they're going to face a moment of truth. Most of them will fail without even realizing they're being tested. They'll make their choice and then immediately rationalize it, spiritualize it, convince themselves they chose me when really they chose themselves. The vision began to fade, and we were just sitting in the darkening cathedral again. Through the broken stained glass, I could see the last light of day disappearing. Tomorrow night, Jesus said, standing up, come back here one more time. I'll show you how to pass the test. I'll show you what real readiness looks like. But tonight, I needed you to see what failure looks like so you'd understand what's at stake. He started to walk away toward the shadows near the altar, and I called out, Lord, wait. How do I tell people this? How do I warn them without sounding like I'm judging them or like I think I'm better than them? He turned back, and even in the dim light, I could see the intensity in his eyes. Tell them the truth, he said. Tell them that in less than 24 hours, they're going to face a test they don't even know is coming. Tell them to examine their hearts right now, not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. Tell them to ask themselves honestly, if Jesus asked me to give up everything, would I? Not could I eventually, but would I right now, immediately, without negotiation? And if they realize they wouldn't, I asked, then they have less than 24 hours to repent. He said to actually repent. Not just feel sorry, not just promise to do better, but to actually turn around, to actually surrender, to actually die to themselves because the test is coming whether they're ready or not. And then he was gone, and I was alone in the cathedral with the darkness and the wind and the weight of what I'd seen. I sat there for another hour, maybe more, just processing, just praying, just new Osen, examining my own heart and finding it wanting in so many ways. When I finally left, it was fully dark outside. The wind was still howling. And as I drove home, I kept thinking, tomorrow. Tomorrow is February 12th. Tomorrow the test comes. And I had no idea if I was ready to pass it. I didn't sleep at all on the night of February 10th. I mean, how could I? I just lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching the hours tick by on my phone. 11:30 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Every hour that passed was 1 hour closer to whatever was coming. On February 12th, around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep entirely and just started praying. But here's the thing, my prayers were different now. I wasn't asking God to bless my plans or help me with my problems. I was asking Him to show me everything in my heart that wasn't surrendered, everything I was still holding on to, everything I loved more than Him. And let me tell you, that's a dangerous prayer because He answered it. I saw my career, not just acting, but the whole thing, the recognition, the platform, the way people look at me differently now because I play Jesus on a TV show. I saw how much I loved that, how much of my identity was wrapped up in it. And I heard that question in my spirit. Would you give this up if I asked you to? I wanted to say yes immediately, but I was honest enough to recognize the hesitation, the fear, the mental negotiation starting in my mind. Well, God, you gave me this platform, so surely you want me to keep it, right? I can do so much good with it. That's when I realized I was doing exactly what I had watched all those people do in the vision. I was rationalizing. I was spiritualizing my self-preservation. So I got out of bed, got dressed, and drove out to the cathedral again. It was still dark, maybe 4 a.m., and I probably looked crazy driving out to an abandoned building in the middle of the night, but I needed to be there. I needed to hear what Jesus was going to show me about how to actually pass this test. The cathedral looked almost ethereal in the pre-dawn darkness. There was a mist rolling in, weaving between the oak trees that grew through the broken floor, and the whole place seemed to glow with this faint, otherworldly light. I walked through the doorway, and immediately I felt it. He was already there waiting for me. You couldn't sleep, Jesus said, and it wasn't a question. He was standing near the altar again, but this time the space around him seemed brighter, like dawn was breaking inside the cathedral, even though it was still dark outside. No, I said, walking toward him. Lord, I've been examining my heart like you said, and I'm finding things I don't want to let go of, things I'm afraid to surrender. I know, he said gently. That's why you're here. That's why I'm going to show you what real readiness looks like. Not so you'll feel condemned, but so you'll know how to actually prepare for what's coming in. He paused, and I knew he was counting down. In about 19 hours, I sat on the pew, and he sat beside me again. But this time, the atmosphere was different, less heavy, less oppressive. There was still weight, but it was the weight of hope rather than judgment. Last night, I showed you failure, he said. Tonight, I'm going to show you success. I'm going to show you the people who pass the test. And more importantly, I'm going to show you why they pass. Because it's not about being perfect. It's not about having it all figured out. It's about one thing, one simple thing that most of the church has completely missed. The air in front of us began to shimmer again, and the vision opened up. But this time, instead of seeing a church building or a crowd of people, I saw individuals, one at a time, up close, personal. The first person I saw was that single mom from the night before, the one who'd passed the test immediately. I watched her morning routine on February 12th. She woke up exhausted like always, got her kids ready for school, went to her first job. The whole time she was praying, not formal prayers, just talking to Jesus about everything, about her tiredness, her fears, her bills, her kids, her frustrations, everything. Watch what happens when the test comes, Jesus said. I watched as that moment hit, that question in her heart, will you choose me now? And I saw her face. She smiled, actually smiled, and in her heart, I heard her response. Yes, Lord, same as yesterday, same as every day. Everything I have is yours. Why was it so easy for her? I asked. Because she's been saying yes every day for years, Jesus explained. She's been practicing surrender in the small moments when she's exhausted, but chooses to be patient with her kids anyway. When she's worried about money, but chooses to trust me instead of panicking. When she's lonely, but chooses to find her satisfaction in me rather than in desperate relationships. By the time the big test came, it wasn't actually big for her. It was just another moment of saying what she'd already been saying all along. The vision shifted, and I saw that elderly man in the nursing home. He was sitting in his wheelchair looking out the window. Nobody had visited him in weeks. He had every reason to be bitter, angry, resentful. But instead, I watched him pray for his family who'd forgotten him, for the nurses who cared for him, for other residents who were suffering. When the test came, he passed it the same way the single mom had. Immediately, joyfully, without hesitation. He has nothing left, I observed. No comfort, no security, no plans for the future, just you. Exactly, Jesus said. And that's not a tragedy, that's freedom. He's already lost everything the world says matters. So he's discovered that I'm the only thing that actually does matter. The test wasn't hard for him because he'd already been tested by life itself and had chosen me through all of it. I watched person after person who passed the test. A teenager who'd been rejected by her Christian parents for asking hard questions about faith. She passed. A man who'd lost his business and his reputation for refusing to compromise his integrity. He passed. A woman who'd left a thriving ministry because God called her to serve in obscurity. She passed. I'm seeing a pattern, I said slowly. The people who pass, they're the ones who've already been through fire, who've already lost things, who've already had to choose you over comfort. Yes and no. Jesus said, some of them have been through external fire, circumstances that stripped things away from them, but others. The vision shifted again, and I saw a young couple, probably in their 30s, with good jobs and a nice house and healthy kids. Everything the world says you should want, they're going to pass too. Jesus said, watch. I watched their morning on February 12th. They woke up, prayed together, got their kids ready. But there was something different about them, and they held everything loosely. They were grateful for their blessings, but I could see they weren't clinging to them. Their house was nice, but it was also constantly full of people who needed help. They turned their guest room into a permanent space for whoever needed it. Their money was managed well, but they gave away a shocking percentage of it. When the test came, they passed it together, holding hands, saying yes without hesitation. They haven't lost everything externally, I said, confused. They still have all their blessings, but they've lost everything internally, Jesus explained. They've died to ownership. They know that none of it actually belongs to them. It's all mine, and they're just stewards. They've practiced generosity, practiced hospitality, practiced holding their plans loosely. So when I asked them to surrender everything, they could do it easily because they'd already surrendered it in their hearts long ago. The light in the cathedral was growing brighter now. Through the broken stained glass, I could see the actual dawn starting to break outside, and the colored light was beginning to stream in again. Reds and golds and blues. So the secret, I said, isn't about waiting until the test comes and then trying to pass it. It's about living in a state of constant surrender so that when the test comes, you're already ready. Yes, Jesus said, and I could hear the approval in his voice. Readiness isn't a moment. It's a lifestyle. It's not about what you do when the crisis comes. It's about who you've been becoming in all the ordinary moments leading up to it. The vision shifted one more time, and I saw myself. I was standing in that same cathedral, but it was later, maybe that evening, February 12th, and I watched as the test came to me, that question hitting my heart. Will you choose me now? I saw myself hesitate. I saw the fear, the calculation, the mental negotiation. But then I saw something else. I saw myself remember this moment, this conversation, these visions, and I saw myself make a choice. I watched myself mentally lay down my career, my reputation, my plans, my comfort, my security, all of it, not knowing if God would give any of it back, but choosing him anyway, choosing him over all of it. And I saw that light appear around me, the same light I'd seen around those 30 people, around the single mom, around the elderly man, around everyone who'd passed. Is that really going to happen? I asked, my voice shaking. Am I really going to pass? That depends on what you do with the next 19 hours, Jesus said. I've shown you what failure looks like and what success looks like. I've shown you that readiness is about daily surrender, not crisis moment heroics. Now you have to choose. Are you going to spend these hours practicing surrender, or are you going to spend them trying to figure out how to keep your life while still technically obeying me? He stood up, and I stood with him. The cathedral was fully bright now, the morning sun streaming through the broken stained glass, creating those beams of colored light that made the whole space look almost heavenly. Here's what I want you to understand, Jesus said, turning to face me directly. The test that's coming in 19 hours, it's not about me trying to catch people failing. It's not about me being harsh or demanding. It's about me offering people an opportunity to finally actually truly surrender, to stop playing church and start being the church, to stop performing Christianity and start living it. He walked toward the altar and I followed him. He placed his hand on the old stone worn smooth by centuries of use. This cathedral, he said, was built by people who understood sacrifice. They poured their resources, their time, their very lives into creating a space to worship me, and then it was abandoned, left to decay, forgotten. But look at it now. He gestured around at the vines growing through the windows, the trees growing through the floor, the way nature had reclaimed the space. It's more beautiful now than it ever was, because when human effort stops trying to control everything, when we let go and surrender, that's when my life can actually grow. I looked around at the cathedral with new eyes. He was right. The broken roof let in the sky. The missing walls let in the wind. The trees growing through the floor created a canopy of green. It was wild and untamed and absolutely beautiful. That's what I want to do with my church, Jesus said quietly. I want to break open all their carefully constructed religion and let my actual life grow through it. But I can't do that until they're willing to let their structures break, until they're willing to let their plans crumble, until they're willing to surrender control. And that's what the test is about, I said, understanding flooding through me. It's not about you taking things away from people. It's about you offering them something better, actual life with you instead of just religion about you. Yes, he said, and his smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. Finally, you understand. The people who pass the test aren't losing anything real. They're gaining everything. They're trading their small, self-centered lives for the abundant life I've always wanted to give them. But they can't receive it with clenched fists. They have to open their hands and let go. I thought about my own clenched fists, all the things I'd been holding on to so tightly, my career, my reputation, my plans, my comfort. And I realized that as long as I was holding on to those things, my hands weren't free to receive what Jesus actually wanted to give me. So what do I do? I asked. In these next 19 hours, how do I prepare? Jesus walked back over to me and placed both hands on my shoulders, looking directly into my eyes. You practice surrender, he said. Not in some dramatic public way. Just in the small moments when you're tempted to check your social media to see how many likes you got. Surrender that need for validation. When you're tempted to plan out your future, surrender that need for control. When you're tempted to protect your reputation, surrender that need for approval. Every small surrender is practice for the big one. And when the test comes, I asked, when that question hits my heart, you'll know what to do, he said, because you'll have been doing it all day. Surrender isn't something you figure out in the moment. It's something you practice until it becomes who you are. The vision was fading now, and we were just standing in the cathedral in the morning light in the reality of February 11th, 2026. One more thing, Jesus said as he started to fade. When you tell people about this, and you must tell them, don't let them think the test is just for February 12th. That's just when the veil becomes thin, when the choice becomes obvious. But the test is actually every day, every moment, every decision. Are they choosing me or are they choosing themselves? Are they surrendering or are they clinging? Are they dying to their own lives or are they just trying to get me to bless their lives? I'll tell them, I promised. I'll tell them everything you've shown me. Good, he said, because some will listen, not many. Most will dismiss this as dramatic or crazy or just another prophecy that doesn't come true. But some will listen. Some will examine their hearts. Some will practice surrender. And when the test comes, they'll pass. And they'll discover that what they thought was loss was actually gain. That what they thought was death was actually life. That what they thought was the end was actually the beginning. And then he was gone, and I was alone in the cathedral with the morning light. and the birds singing in the rafters, and the wind rustling through the trees growing through the floor. I sat back down on the pew and just processed everything I'd seen over the past 3 nights, everything I'd learned about readiness, about surrender, about what it actually means to follow Jesus. I looked at my phone. It was 6:47 a.m. on February 11th, 2026, which meant I had about 36 hours until the test came, 36 hours to practice surrender, 36 hours to examine my heart, 36 hours to let go of everything I'd been clinging to. So I started right there. I pulled out my phone and started going through my social media. And I felt that pull, that need to check the numbers, to see the validation, to feed that hunger for approval. And I practiced surrender. I put the phone away without checking. I thought about my career, about the show, about all my plans for the future, and I practiced surrender. I mentally laid it all down, told God it was His, that I'd walk away from all of it if He asked me to. I thought about my reputation, about what people think of me, about how this testimony might make me look crazy, and I practiced surrender. I decided I'd rather be thought a fool for Christ than be comfortable in people's approval. And you know what? Each small surrender got easier, not because I was getting stronger, but because I was discovering what Jesus had been trying to show me all along, that the things I was surrendering weren't actually giving me life anyway. They were just weighing me down, keeping my hands too full to receive what He actually wanted to give me. I stayed in that cathedral until mid-morning, just praying, just practicing, just surrendering. And when I finally left, I felt different, lighter, freer. Not because I had everything figured out, but because I'd finally stopped trying to figure everything out and had just let go. Now, it's February 12th, 2026, the day of the test. And I'm recording this testimony before it happens, because I want you to know, I want you to really know that readiness isn't about being perfect. It's not about having all the answers. It's not about never being afraid or never doubting. Readiness is about surrender daily, moment by moment, ordinary surrender. It's about holding everything loosely, your plans, your comfort, your reputation, your security, your very life, so that when Jesus asks you to let go, you can do it without hesitation. It's about practicing in the small moments so you're ready for the big ones. It's about dying to yourself every single day so that when the crisis comes, you've already died and there's nothing left to lose. Listen, I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the next few hours. I don't know if the test will be dramatic or subtle, public or private, obvious or hidden, but I know it's coming. Jesus showed me, and more importantly, He showed me how to pass it. So here's what I'm asking you to do right now, today, in this moment. Examine your heart, not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Ask yourself honestly, if Jesus asked me to give up everything, my career, my comfort, my plans, my reputation, my security, everything, would I? Not could I eventually, but would I right now, immediately without negotiation? If your answer is anything other than an immediate yes, then you have work to do, and you need to start doing it right now because the test is coming whether you're ready or not. Start practicing surrender in the small moments. That need to check your phone for validation, surrender it. That need to control your future, surrender it. That need to protect your reputation, surrender it. That need to keep your life comfortable and safe, surrender it. Every small surrender is practice. Every moment of letting go is preparation. Every choice to die to yourself is training for the moment when Jesus asks you to lose your life so you can actually find it. And here's the beautiful thing. The thing Jesus showed me in that cathedral as the morning light streamed through the broken stained glass. What feels like loss is actually gain. What feels like death is actually life. What feels like the end is actually the beginning. Because when you finally open your clenched fists and let go of everything you've been holding on to, that's when your hands are finally free to receive what Jesus has been trying to give you all along. Not a better version of your life. Not a blessed version of your plans, but actual abundant, overflowing life with Him. The kind of life that doesn't depend on circumstances or comfort or security or approval. The kind of life that can't be shaken because it's not built on anything that can be taken away. The kind of life that's found only in complete, total, absolute surrender to Jesus. That's what readiness looks like. That's what the test is measuring. That's what most of the church has missed. So please, I'm begging you, don't ignore this warning. Don't dismiss it as dramatic or crazy or just another prophecy. Examine your heart. Practice surrender. Let go of everything you're clinging to, because in just a few hours, the test is coming. and I want you to pass. I want you to experience the freedom and joy and life that comes from finally, actually, truly surrendering everything to Jesus. I'm going to go now. I'm going to spend these last few hours practicing surrender, examining my heart, letting go of everything I've been holding on to, and when the test comes, when that question hits my heart, I'm going to say yes immediately, completely, without hesitation. Not because I'm strong or brave or have it all figured out, but because I've been practicing, because I've been surrendering in the small moments, because I've been dying to myself daily, so that when the big moment comes, there's nothing left to lose. I pray you'll do the same. I pray you'll examine your heart right now. I pray you'll start practicing surrender in this very moment. I pray that when the test comes, you'll pass. Not because you're perfect, but because you've been preparing. And I pray that on the other side of this test, we'll all discover what Jesus has been trying to show us all along, that losing our lives for his sake is the only way to actually find them. The cathedral is empty now, except for me. The morning light is streaming through the broken stained glass, creating those beams of colored light that make everything look holy. The wind is rustling through the trees, growing through the floor. And I'm sitting here on this old wooden pew, my hands open, my heart surrendered, ready for whatever comes next. Are you ready? Really ready? Not ready in the way the church has taught you with the right knowledge and the right doctrine and the right words, but ready in the way Jesus actually measures readiness, with a surrendered heart, open hands, and a life that's already been laid down. The test is coming. Don't ignore this warning. Surrender now while there's still time. And discover that what you thought was loss is actually the greatest gain you could ever experience. Jesus himself and the abundant life he's been trying to give you all along. I'll see you on the other JGHFJ.